Ko kahukura toku ingoa. So my name is Kahukura. I'm a mum of two. I'm late diagnosed autistic ADHD. I'm a solo parent. I have a Facebook page, More Than One Neurotype, where I go through fluxes. I'll say I go through fluxes of, of posting and providing content as and when I can. And just really based on understanding that everyone is different. So I'd say it's kind of like that fluffy entry level information. We don't even have to use the word autistic when we're thinking about it. We can just think that people can have different behaviors and react for different reasons, and that's all okay. I think it was really just from there was a real lack of people understanding behavior, uh, not understanding distress behavior. I think a lot of the time we can, in theory, like understand neurodiversity and how things can be different, but when we're actually seeing those things play out in front of us, especially with children, um, like people don't really get that that's what it is. So it was really trying to reframe things as behaviors that people would tend to see as like a child being naughty and rude, and that there's actually like there can be other reasons behind that. So it was just really wanting to educate the people around me, the people that were around my children, parenting my children, the communities that we were in, so that, yeah, just to stop that misunderstanding. Um, I guess, yeah, I mean, lots of things. I think, like interrupting or just very much those kind of rude behaviors, or a big one at the moment is like when there's rules and you must stick to the rules, or there's all of this, and then someone getting distressed because that changes. And it's like, yeah, that's actually what the autism is. Like it's not like, oh, come on, like get over it, or like, why are you acting like that? It's like, no, that when we know what the structure and the routine is of everything and we have a plan in place, if you change that, there are going to be distress behaviors. There is going to be a reaction from that. That's literally what autism looks like in real life. Yeah. And it quite often, like you hear a lot like, oh, make good choices, but like even that, especially when you're looking at an individual that either just or also has ADHD, like the way in which we come to choices, especially when you have like a brain that is still a children's brain, like making a good choice is such a different concept, and it doesn't look like how everyone would make a good choice. So like I feel like even saying that, especially if you're a child that you're like trying really hard to make good choices, but your brain works in a way that means that it's not going to be able to be like other people are doing it. So yeah, it can be a bit frustrating to hear some of those lines that get said. I think being misunderstood is a really big one. Um, just even the way that we communicate, we take things literally. Again, with the wanting things to be a certain way and then our distress when it doesn't work out like that. Um, really is people not understanding us, and that getting reframed. And I think especially with children, if they're not around people that understand that and they get viewed negatively, then that's really going to drive into them having something intrinsically wrong with them, especially if they don't know that they have these types of brains. You know, they will naturally tend to blame themselves. And then we get things like poor mental health. So, and, you know, I don't have the facts in front of me, but I'm fairly certain that we have like higher rates of poor mental health. And that's because we're always internalizing those messages of people around us if we're not around people that don't understand. So yeah, that would be a big thing. Keeping someone's self-worth intact would be the biggest barrier. It's like, so I'm smiling, but like, not in a, it's like oh, that is so horrible. Yeah, it really, it has. And I think it's not understanding, especially in children, because like as adults, we can kind of put stuff aside and know that there's an external component to it. But when you're a kid, you are just going to internalize everything. So people don't understand the role they can play in literally keeping a child alive and thriving in adulthood. Like they have a couple bad experiences and you're actually really going to damage them. I mean, when I was at school, these words did not exist. Like they may have existed, but they weren't something I'd come across. Like I remember watching, probably as an early teen, watching um like some home renovation show, and they were talking about this autistic kid, and they made like a special sensory room, but it was like really bright and overwhelming. So I was like, I'd never thought that that would be something, because I was like, oh, that's horrible. So that was kind of like my first time I had ever heard that word. But other than that, like there was nothing about understanding differences. Um, and I think that just made me incredibly vulnerable. It's left me with a lot of trauma and not understanding myself. And it wasn't like I got diagnosed when I was 38. So it wasn't up until that point that I realized that there actually wasn't something like terribly wrong with me and I was just failing. Like I actually had reasons. So having that a lot earlier would have like changed my life, like in a massive, massive way. And I think the way that to see children that are young now and understand that there's differences and understand there's a reason for why they find things challenging, like they just, even though the world is challenging, even with that, they've got the upper hand. Yeah. Some of the graphics that I've done have obviously been really helpful, and like the majority of graphics that I did was even like pre-COVID or maybe post-COVID. I can't quite remember. It gets a little bit blurry, but it was a while ago. I haven't done anything in quite a few years, but they still get shared, particularly the one about the social story with brains and phones. That is often getting shared. Um, I have that as a resource that can be purchased on Teachers Pay Teachers, and it still blows me away that they are still being purchased, especially when, like it's the internet. People could just take those and use them for free. And I mean, I'm sure they do. But I've had people from literally all over the world say, hey, this is in our pediatric unit in America, or we used it in a conference, or like it just blows my mind that people still buy them and they're used by so many different people. I'm mindful of how we can take that bigger concept of what is autism, and I can, because I guess of my autistic ability, I can turn that into, but what does it actually look like? So I think it's that one. And then also it's the first series I ever did about, it's basically going through what would be a negative behavior and then the thing for it. So I'm not like trying to be, um, like I'm not being, I can't remember the words. I'm not like trying to be annoying and like do stuff. I'm actually stimming, like that kind of thing, like reframing things so that people can see it in a practical way. Um, so yeah, that tends to have very much filled a gap, and I'm surprised it's still filling a gap because it has been quite a few years. Some of the support people that helped me through, shout out to my therapist who I've been seeing weekly for a long time, who has also helped me change my life, because of course we have often when we have autism and or ADHD, we quite often have trauma and situations that we're in that we don't even realize we're in unhealthy, toxic situations, because like it's just been normal to us. So yeah, she is my biggest support that has allowed me to really dig myself out of a pretty dark place and a pretty dark hole. Um, Also just my peers. Like I think knowing knowing my neurology means that I've found my people. And that's not to say that everyone that's autistic is going to be my people, but like I have found people that are similar to me. So like my best friends are so important, and I have been able to actually find really amazing meaningful friendships, especially after a time where before, when I didn't know, I wasn't really understanding what friendship was and what good friendship was. So yeah, I'm now in a place where I get that and I have it, and that feels like amazing. I think people that do share their lived experiences, like I'm the way that, I'm the classic. I mean, we've moved on to TikTok now, but I'm the classic that I realized I was autistic through social media. It was through people sharing their experiences on Facebook, looking up um, YouTube videos, especially Agony Autie, Sarah over in the UK, watching someone who I could see myself in her, and just how she talked and how she like used all the hand gestures and was like all of that sort of stuff. Um, and Christy Forbes, especially in Australia, and um, like just some, like the OGs that have been around for a while. And it was through watching their stuff that I came to understand I was autistic. And I guess that's what really annoys me when I hear people talking to their GP or whoever, and they're like, oh, you've just been watching TikToks. And it's like, that actually is helpful. Social media is really helpful. So yeah, anybody that gets on social media and shares their story and their life experiences, that's how we figure out who we are. So yeah. I'm not a reading the DSM criteria type autistic. I want to see how you talk about things. I want to hear how your life has been. And then I'm like, oh, is that? Oh, okay. That's me too. All right. I feel like we got to a point where, yes, we've got these words in front of us. We know about neurodiversity. We know about autism. We know about ADHD. We know these things. The next step is like, we need to know what that looks in practicality. And also, what I would love more than anything is for parents to start talking to their children about differences, about accepting differences, about just because a kid does this doesn't mean they're weird. Because I think kids are so good at spotting those differences. Like they will clock an autistic kid straight away. And like, let's actually talk to our kids about everybody's different, and that's okay. They've got a different way. You don't actually have to point it out and make fun of them at school, because equally, like I was saying, you start that internalizing of things being wrong. And I think if we move more towards what does it practically look like, and how can we get other children and other people around to accept those, then we're going to start tackling this whole poor mental health thing. So yeah, that's where I really want to focus my attention on.